We're going to begin by creating our slip knot. Put the yarn over your finger once, yarn over your finger twice, pull the back over the front yarn, but not off the finger. Pull the second one over the yarn and off the finger, gently pulling to create the slip knot. We are going to chain 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to place the tip of the hook through the first chain of the chain 5, keeping the chain 5 beneath the hook, yarn over, pull through both stitches. This will create the loop we're about to work our stitches into. We're going to chain 2, yarn over into the center of the hook hole, pull through the yarn. You've got 3 stitches on the hook, pull through all 3 stitches. We are going to do a total of 9 of these stitches. This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Your very first chain 2 counts as a stitch, so that will be 10. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the tip of the hook into the second chain of the chain 2. There's the first, there's the second, and we're going to go into the second and do a slip knot, slip stitch. We're going to slip stitch the new colour in. You don't need to create a knot or anything, just hook the new colour and pull it through both stitches. Pull the long tail of the yellow to tighten up that last stitch. I crisscross the green yarn to create the knot and create 1 stitch, pulling tightly on the tail of the green just to secure that stitch in place. Then we're going to chain 2 and then into the top of where we've slipped it through is where we're going to put our first stitches. So it's going to be yarn over, pull the yarn through. You've got 3 stitches on your hook and we're going to go through 2, go through 2, yarn over into the same space as the last stitch, pull the yarn through, go through 2, go through 2. Now we're going to chain 1. This is the middle of your petal. Yarn over and still into the same space as the last stitch. Pull the yarn through, creating 3 stitches on the hook. Pull through 2, pull through 2. And repeat again. Yarn over through the same space as the last stitch. Pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. And to finish the petal, we're going to chain 2, and then put a single crochet into the same chain space that we've been working every other stitch into the same space. So put your hook through, yarn over, pull through. You'll have 2 stitches on the hook, yarn over, pull through both. That is your first petal. We're going to go into the next space between the bottom stitches, the yellow stitches. So we're going into the space between, and we're going to pull the yarn through and pull through both. Into the next space, pull the yarn through and chain 2. Then we're going to create another petal, all in the same space that we've just made our first chain 2, in this space. So yarn over, pull the yarn through, pull through 2, pull through 2, and repeat again. Yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, chain 1, yarn over, pull the yarn through 2, pull through 2, and repeat again. You're going to chain 2 for the last stitch of the petal, and then go through the same hole, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through both, and that creates our second petal. Into the next space between the stitches, we're just going to single crochet, and then in the next space we're going to create our next petal. So pull through a single crochet, chain 2, yarn over, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. Repeat that again. Pull the yarn through, pull through 2, pull through 2, chain 1, yarn over, through the gap, pull the yarn through 2, through 2, and repeat again. And then chain 2 and single crochet back in the same space to finish the petal. In the next space is just 1 single crochet. It can get very tight, so you'd have to do a lot of pulling to find those spaces. And then in the next space we're going to single crochet, chain 2 to create the next petal. Chaining 1 in the middle, don't forget that. And then for the finishing the petal, you chain 2. And single crochet into the same space. Just a single crochet into the next gap. And then the last petal into the next space. Chain 2. Chaining 1 in the middle of the petal. And then to finish the petal, the chain 2 and single crochet into the same gap. And then one final single crochet into the last gap of the yellow stitches. Things are getting very squashed now, so it's difficult to see. And then slip stitch into the first chain of the first petal, just to finish it off and fasten the yarn. Leave a very, very long tail for the petals, as you will need this yarn to stitch the petal onto the granny square. So there we have a completed flower with 5 petals and a nice middle. I'm going to trim off the yellow yarn, being very careful not to cut any of the green stitches of the petals. Now we'll create the small granny square. Again, yarn over your finger, back over the front, the second one over the front of your finger to create the slip knot. Pull tightly to the hook, but always make sure to leave a little gap for your hook to slide through without catching. You don't want to make it too tight. We're going to create the granny square. Tucking away the tail so we don't get confused, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to pop the end of the hook into the first chain of that chain 3. This makes it very tight, but it gives a good look to the granny square. So we're going to yarn over and pull through both stitches on the hook. It's a very, very small loop we've created. I'm going to chain 2, and it's yarn over. Try and find that centre of the loop you've just made. Pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And it is the same for every stitch we're going to put in the centre of this granny square. We're going to do 2 of these because your chain 2 is classed as a stitch. So there's your cluster of 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to create a corner, chaining 2. And then we're going to create another cluster of 3 stitches in the same hole. So it's yarn over, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. And repeat this 3 times. This will create your second cluster, chain 2 for the corner. Your corners will become more clearer on the second row. So yarn over and still into the same hole. Pull the yarn through, pull through 2, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. pull through 2, yarn over, through the hole, pull through 2, pull through 2, chain 2. This is creating another corner, and now we will create our last cluster of 3 stitches. Chain 2, and now we're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 2 of the first cluster to finish the round. So there's the stitches 1 and 2. Go into that second stitch, put your tail over the top of your hook. This is how we tuck in our tail as we go along. Pull the yarn through and then put it straight through that last stitch. Chain 2 is the start of your next round. So you can see a little square there, and those gaps are your corners. We're going straight into the first gap to your left, exactly the same stitch throughout. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. And they are always in clusters of 3. So there's your third one. You chain 2, and you're going to put another cluster of 3 in the same space. 1, 2, and 3. That has created your corner. We're going to yarn over and go into the next space and do exactly the same. A cluster of 3 stitches, 1, 2, and 3, with a chain 2 and another cluster of 3 in the same space. 1, 2, and 3. There's your second corner. And again, repeat the same cluster of 3, chain 2, cluster of 3 into the next corner. That's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and another cluster of 3. As you can see, I am tucking the tail as I go along and around the granny square. There's your third corner. And again, straight into the next space, we'll do a cluster of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. But before we do this cluster, we're only going to do 2, not 3. Because our chain 2, which was at the beginning of the round, here, this is the chain 2 that started the round. That is your third stitch for this cluster. You're going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 2 by pulling the yarn through both stitches, completing the round. So there you have 4 corners. we're going to chain 2, and we are going to make a cluster in this middle gap first. So yarn over into that middle gap, pull the yarn through, pull through 2, pull through 2, and repeat 2 times, because your chain 2 is your first stitch. So we're not going to chain in between, we're just going to go straight into the next gap and do a cluster of 3 stitches, and then we're going to chain 2 to create the corner, and another cluster of 3 stitches in the same gap. You will only chain between clusters at the corners, not the sides. It will make your corners nice and clear. So yarn over and into the middle gap. Make a cluster of 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Again, no chaining at this point. We are going to yarn over and go straight into the corner. Make a cluster of 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and chain 2. This is the only place we chain. 1, 2, and then do the second cluster of 3 stitches in the same space. 1, 2, and 3. And there's your next corner. Yarn over, straight into the side gap, no chaining. Make your cluster of 3 stitches. 2, 3, and again yarn over, straight into the corner, no chain, a cluster of 3. 1, 2, 3, and then chain 2 to make your corner. Yarn over and make your next cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over and straight into the side gap. 1, 2, 3, and for the last corner, yarn over into the corner gap, do your cluster of 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, chain 2 for the corner, and in the same space another cluster of 3. To finish the round, we will be slip stitching into the top of the chain 2 of the beginning of this round in the next cluster. So there's your chain 2, 1, 2, and we go into that second stitch, pull the yarn through both stitches, pull the yarn through to fasten. You don't need a long strand left on this, You can cut it short, but leave it long enough to sew that tail in when you're hiding it later. And there's your completed square. There should be nice even spacing between all the clusters. And we bring the flower and we place the middle of the flower over the middle of the granny square. And using the long tail we left on the flower, we're going to stitch a ladder stitch gently behind the petals. Just weave it in using a darning needle from one side to the other. Try not to go through the very back of the granny square. Try and hook the front of the